The heavy silence in the cabinet room was broken by the sharp scrape of a chair. Caleb North pushed himself to his feet, his dark suit a stark contrast to the polished mahogany of the long table. He announced, his voice steady, that he had a matter of urgent national importance to address. President Adrian Michaels leaned back in his high-backed chair, a flicker of weariness in his eyes. He gestured for Caleb to proceed. Caleb's gaze was direct, unwavering. He formally requested the immediate dismissal of Julian Pierce, the president's chief of staff. The air in the room grew thick. Adrian felt a familiar headache begin to throb at his temples. Caleb was, as his reputation suggested, a man of unbending principle. He had graduated top of his class from Georgetown at 20, and now, at 28, served as Secretary of State. He was relentless, scrupulous, and possessed an integrity so fierce that even the most seasoned lobbyists gave him a wide berth. He also happened to have a face that seemed carved from old marble, a feature that Adrian found profoundly distracting. As Caleb listed Julian's perceived transgressions, Adrian heard none of it. His attention was fixed on the sharp line of Caleb's jaw, the disciplined set of his shoulders, and the quiet intensity that radiated from him like heat. Caleb's voice sharpened, demanding the president's attention. Adrian nodded, the words slipping out before he could stop them. He remarked that Caleb possessed a truly remarkable mind. A hush fell over the assembled secretaries. Caleb's expression darkened. He interpreted the president's comment as a dismissal of his grave concerns. He stated that if the president wanted his resignation, he needed only to ask for it. The barely concealed anger made his chest rise and fall beneath his tailored suit. He declared that he would not stand by while the administration was corrupted. He would let his resignation speak for itself, a testament to a president who refused to heed counsel and surrounded himself with sycophants. Before Adrian could clarify, several older cabinet members began murmuring their support for the secretary, urging the president to reconsider. A sharp pain pulsed behind Adrian's eyes. He cursed his own lack of discipline. But a president could not be seen to backtrack. With a cold smile, Adrian wondered aloud why Caleb was so offended by a simple compliment. He questioned if Caleb found presidential praise to be an insult. Caleb's eyes flickered towards Julian, who sat silently observing. Caleb's reply was sharp. He was a public servant, not a courtier who traded on charm or personal favor. He was certainly not, he added, one of the president's inner circle of favorites. The word hung in the air. Adrian had no such circle. Since his inauguration, his life had been a relentless cycle of briefings and paperwork, often ending with him sleeping on the couch in his private study. He slammed his hand on the table, shouting that Caleb should cease his baseless accusations. He warned him that the legacy of his family, a shield granted by Adrian's own father, would not protect him forever. Caleb stood his ground, his chin lifted. He replied that all power flowed from the presidency, and if the president wished to remove him, he would not resist. A few of the elder statesmen moved to placate him, their voices trembling with appeals for calm. The argument raged for another 10 minutes, ending only when the vice president intervened, pulling Caleb aside. The meeting was adjourned. Later, watching Caleb's rigid back as he walked down the long colonnade, Adrian slammed his fist against the wall. He wondered why his father had saddled him with such an impossible, infuriating man. Leo, his personal aide, had a knack for appearing at just the right moment. He sidled up to Adrian, his expression shrewd. He asked quietly if the president truly wanted Caleb gone, or if he just wanted him. The question struck Adrian with the force of a physical blow. He grabbed Leo's arm, his voice a low hiss. telling him he was testing the limits of his position. Leo pulled away, a knowing glint in his eye. He pointed out that every time Secretary North spoke, the president's attention drifted. He suggested that there was no shame in admiring a person of substance, regardless of their gender. Adrian was left alone with his thoughts. It was true that he and Caleb had always been at odds. Adrian's older brother, Victor, had been the one groomed for power, the one Caleb had truly admired. Adrian, with his reputation for fast cars and fleeting romances, was dismissed by Caleb as a blemish on the family's public image. Had Victor taken office, he and Caleb would have been a formidable pair, their partnership lauded for a generation. But fate had intervened. His father's sudden illness and a shocking turn of events had placed Adrian in the Oval Office. He remembered the news breaking. Someone had told him Caleb nearly shattered a crystal glass in his hand. But Adrian had won. On Inauguration Day, standing on the Capitol steps, he had watched the proud, aloof Caleb approach him, forced to offer his congratulations and deference. The memory still brought a grim satisfaction. He recalled leaning in and murmuring Caleb's name, asking why he wouldn't meet his eye. Caleb had replied through clenched teeth that protocol forbade it. Adrian had circled him slowly, noting the stiff posture, the forced respect. It was a small, bitter victory. The victory was short-lived. Caleb began his crusade almost immediately. Memos and reports piled up on Adrian's desk daily. For years, Adrian had worked himself to the bone, rising before dawn, earning a grudging respect for his diligence. The country was stable, the economy steady. Yet, for Caleb, it was never enough. The man seemed to run on pure, relentless conviction, driving himself and everyone around him to the point of exhaustion. Adrian had had enough. If Caleb was determined to make his life difficult, he would return the favor. When two senators were locked in a bitter, public feud, Caleb insisted Adrian mediate. Adrian, sipping his coffee, had remarked that the two men had such passion. Perhaps they should get a room and settle it privately. The senators were aghast. Caleb was incandescent with rage, lecturing him that the Senate floor was a place for serious debate. For Adrian's birthday, Caleb had gifted him a thick, somber biography of a famously stoic and self-denying historical leader. The unspoken message was clear. Adrian, holding the book in one hand and a glass of champagne in the other, had looked at his reflection in the window and quipped about who was the most charismatic leader of all. Caleb had avoided him for 3 days. But this latest incident was different. The accusation against Julian, framed as it was, felt personal. Adrian, back in his study, picked up a heavy silver letter opener and stabbed it repeatedly into a stack of briefing papers. He had to end this. Leo watched him, then hesitantly suggested that Caleb's years of loyal, if critical, service were a benefit to the presidency. Adrian retorted that it was like having a guard dog that wouldn't stop biting its owner. Leo then proposed that perhaps there was a misunderstanding rooted in their shared past. He recommended Adrian invite the secretary for a private drink that evening to clear the air. After a moment, Adrian's anger cooled. He agreed. The moon was high over the Washington Monument when Caleb finally arrived. Adrian was already several glasses into a bottle of fine scotch. The smell of alcohol in the air seemed to deepen the disapproval on Caleb's face. Adrian, attempting to lighten the mood, remarked on what a beautiful night it was. He joked that instead of fine company, he had summoned the stern Secretary of State for a drink, a testament to their moving professional relationship. His laughter echoed in the empty room. Caleb's expression only grew darker. He gave a stiff, formal bow and stated that with enemies of the state surrounding the president, he must once again insist on Julian Pierce's removal. It was always Julian. Adrian had appointed him. He was a brilliant, charming man. Adrian recalled the day of his appointment. Julian, beaming, had asked if the president might spare a flower from the vase on his desk. Adrian had handed him one, and Julian, with a flourish, had tucked it into his lapel. He'd given Adrian a dazzling smile and thanked him for the opportunity to serve. He was such a charismatic figure. Adrian had been captivated until Caleb's cold voice cut through the memory from behind him, asking if the president had found a new favorite. Adrian had turned away, affecting a casual air. He said he was merely reminiscing about the old days, when Victor would have been the one making such appointments. He asked Caleb if that bothered him. A muscle jumped in Caleb's jaw. He remained silent, but Adrian knew he had hit a nerve. The mention of Victor always cast a shadow over Caleb's face, as if Adrian were personally responsible for sundering some great historical partnership. So Adrian pressed the point. He asked Caleb if he resented having to serve a man he'd once considered a reckless fool, if he secretly wished Victor were president. He tilted his head back, pouring more scotch down his throat. He accused Caleb of being Victor's man, tolerated only because of his father's endorsement. He listed Caleb's endless criticisms, from the budget for state dinners to the size of his security detail. He defended Julian as a loyal aide whose only crime was delivering news with a smile. At the mention of Julian, Caleb's temper flared. He called Julian a manipulative flatterer who used charm as a weapon, and warned that the public was beginning to whisper that the president was easily swayed by such men. He said Adrian's father would be ashamed. The sound of shattering glass filled the room as the tumbler broke in Adrian's hand. He asked Caleb if he had a death wish. Unafraid, Caleb pulled a bound report from his briefcase. He explained that it contained 81 distinct points of criticism, a comprehensive catalog of every misstep Adrian had made since taking office. He held it out, urging the president to reflect on them. He declared that he was prepared to sacrifice his career that very night to prevent Adrian from becoming a failed president. Adrian was shaking with rage. From the cabinet room to his private office, from morning until night, this man hounded him, criticized him, and refused to grant him a shred of respect. All the years of frustration, of being second best, of enduring Caleb's silent disapproval, boiled over. The heat from the scotch rose in his blood. He violently loosened his tie, his mind flashing back to Leo's question. Kill him or... The letter opener clattered to the floor. Adrian advanced on Caleb. He asked, his voice low and dangerous, if Caleb knew what a truly corrupt leader did. Caleb took an involuntary step back. Adrian continued, saying a tyrant silences all dissent and takes whatever he desires, wealth, art, and even people. He leaned in close, his voice a venomous whisper. A true tyrant would have Caleb dragged from his office, stripped of his severe suit, and forced into his bed. He would prove the rumors true by making the entire administration his personal harem. Caleb froze, his face a mask of shock. Adrian let out a harsh laugh. He taunted Caleb, asking if he, the man who always put the country first, would be willing to make one ultimate sacrifice to save everyone else from such a fate. He then turned and yelled for the guards, ordering them to seize the Secretary of State and deliver him to his private quarters. Sunlight stabbed at Adrian's eyes. He sat up with a groan, the room a chaotic mess of overturned furniture and empty bottles. He had the distinct, terrible feeling he'd had another dream about Caleb. The details were too vivid, forcing whiskey past Caleb's lips, taunting him, asking if the president was powerful enough for him now. He wished it had only been a dream. A hand emerged from the tangle of blankets on the floor. Adrian held his breath. A head of dark, disheveled hair followed. As the man sat up, his hair, usually slicked back with severe precision, fell across his face. He looked at Adrian, his expression bewildered. He murmured the president's name. A series of explosions seemed to go off inside Adrian's head. He had slept with the most rigidly moral man in his entire government. If this got out, his presidency was over. He remembered the firestorm of criticism when he was once spotted leaving a private club. This was infinitely worse. His legacy would be permanently stained. Morning light illuminated Caleb's face. He looked dazed, the previous night a blur. Adrian knew he had only moments. There were two outcomes: scandal and impeachment, or Caleb taking his own life out of shame. Neither was acceptable. He scrambled off the couch, grabbed a heavy crystal paperweight from his desk, and, as Caleb began to push himself to his feet, brought it down hard against the back of his head. He stood over the unconscious form, took a deep breath, and straightened his clothes. He called for Leo, his voice shaking only slightly. He explained that he and Secretary North had been engaged in a vigorous policy debate, reminiscing about their university days, and had simply had too much to drink. He ordered Leo to have the secretary discreetly escorted home. Caleb was officially on medical leave for a week. Adrian, in a flurry of activity, granted him a 6-month sabbatical. It was better this way to avoid the profound awkwardness. Adrian plunged himself into work. He toured departments, reviewed budgets, drilled military staff, and cross-examined intelligence officials. After a week of his relentless energy, the entire cabinet looked exhausted. The old guard who had once defended Caleb now looked ready to collapse. They whispered amongst themselves, wondering at the president's sudden, ferocious work ethic. Leo knew the truth. It was a desperate attempt to outrun the memory of that disastrous night. Adrian slammed a folder down on Leo's desk. He demanded to know who had swapped his usual scotch for the high-proof single malt, who had dismissed the Secret Service detail outside his study, and who had insisted he invite Caleb for a drink. Leo turned away, muttering that the president was ungrateful. He had created the perfect opportunity, and Adrian had not only taken it but had then assaulted the man and had him dumped on his own doorstep. Adrian collapsed into his chair, staring up at the ornate ceiling. Caleb North, scholar, statesman, patriot. He would have been a legend if not for being saddled with a disaster like Adrian. All his talent, all his dedication, wasted on a man who had ended up disgracing him in the most profound way. He felt he could never face Caleb again. That evening, with a mountain of paperwork still waiting, Julian offered to stay and help. He read reports in his smooth, measured voice, detailing everything from corruption charges against a provincial governor to a diplomatic gift of exotic fruit from a southern territory. When he finished, he glanced at the clock on the mantel. He noted that it was late, past the city's curfew, and he might not be able to get home. Adrian, exhausted, told him to take one of the residence's guest rooms. Julian smiled, a strange, lingering look in his eyes. He said that a long night stretched ahead, and he wished to speak with the president at length. Adrian waved a dismissive hand, saying he was too tired. A flicker of something that looked like hurt crossed Julian's face. He asked why Secretary North was permitted to engage in all-night debates with the president, but he was not. Before Adrian could process the odd, resentful tone, Julian stumbled forward, his hand catching Adrian's belt for balance. His voice dropped to a whisper. He suggested that a man as uptight as Caleb was surely a disappointment in bed, and that the president should try someone with more enthusiasm. A frantic knocking at the door saved Adrian. It was Leo, his voice urgent. He announced that Secretary North was here and demanded to see the president. Caleb entered and froze. He took in the scene, Julian, his hand still on Adrian's belt, Adrian's own shirt unbuttoned. Caleb's jaw tightened. With a voice like ice, he said he appeared to have come at an inopportune time. He requested that Julian excuse them, as he had a question for the president. Once they were alone, the tension was unbearable. Adrian tried to break it, asking how Caleb was feeling, noting he'd lost weight. Caleb didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on Adrian's loosened belt. Finally, he spoke. He said he had his answer. He took a step back and executed a stiff, formal bow. He stated that the lines between them had been blurred, but from now on, he would not cross them again, and he expected the same of the president. He then glanced toward the door through which Julian had left, adding that if the president must indulge his preferences, he should avoid giving such men any real power. The good news was that Caleb was back at work. The bad news was that he refused to speak to Adrian. He no longer offered criticism, no longer pushed for reforms, no longer argued. He was a ghost in the cabinet, silent and remote. Adrian found himself unnerved, anxious, even bored. He missed the arguments. He missed the scent of clean linen and paper that always clung to Caleb's suits, the fire in his eyes when he was making a point. The work felt meaningless without the conflict. He decided he had to talk to him to clear the air once and for all. He saw Caleb leaving the West Wing and hurried to catch up. He chose his words carefully, then asked if Caleb would join him for a drink in his private quarters that evening. Caleb stopped dead. A spark of fury ignited in his eyes. He asked what Adrian meant by it. Was Julian not enough? Did he intend to humiliate him further? Adrian stammered that it wasn't like that Julian had just tripped, that he only wanted to talk. He reached out and grabbed Caleb's sleeve. Caleb tried to pull away. In the ensuing struggle, there was a sharp, tearing sound. Half of Caleb's jacket sleeve ripped away in Adrian's hand. Caleb looked down at the ruined fabric, then back at Adrian, his face a mask of cold fury. He accused Adrian of trying to force him into a role he didn't want. Adrian insisted he just wanted to talk. Caleb closed his eyes, visibly trying to compose himself. After a long moment, he agreed, but with conditions. No alcohol. No meeting in the residence. And Adrian was to keep his hands to himself. To Adrian's dismay, Caleb brought him to the vast, silent library at Georgetown University. The sight of all those books brought back a flood of unhappy memories. He had never been a scholar. His only talent was an eye for aesthetics. Leo called it a refined sense of lechery. He remembered being a student here, unable to focus on anything but Caleb. The tutors, exasperated, had assigned Caleb to help him. He recalled the faint, pleasant scent of old books and mint from Caleb's presence, the warmth of his hand guiding Adrian's as he tried to draft an essay. He remembered Caleb, his ears turning pink, telling him to stop staring. But Caleb's attention had always been reserved for Adrian's brother, Victor. Victor was the perfect heir, poised, intelligent, and kind. He would gently chide Adrian for his distractions, while he and Caleb discussed policy, foreign affairs, and 100 other things Adrian didn't understand. A painful, acidic feeling would churn in Adrian's gut. He later learned it was called jealousy. Victor was everything a future leader should be. Adrian, by contrast, was a joke. Other students would taunt him, telling him he should hope to be married off to some foreign dignitary's daughter, so his pretty face wouldn't go to waste. He had ignored them, spending months in the campus workshop, trying to carve a gift for Caleb's birthday. It was a signet ring, cut from a single piece of onyx. After ruining a dozen attempts, he finally finished it. He slipped the finished piece into his pocket and went to find Caleb, determined to give it to him before Victor could. He found them in a secluded garden, talking under the moonlight. Their conversation was intense, covering everything from trade deficits to military strategy. Then he heard Caleb's cold, dismissive verdict. He told Victor that Adrian, with his volatile temper and hedonistic lifestyle, was a disgrace and not a serious threat. The world seemed to tilt. The dozens of small cuts on his hands from the carving tools began to throb. Through the gloom, he saw the admiration in Caleb's eyes as he looked at Victor, and Adrian understood. He wasn't jealous of Victor's power. He was jealous of that look, a look Caleb would never give him. He walked to the campus pond and threw the ring into the dark water, watching it sink along with all his foolish, youthful hopes. Back in the present, Adrian's voice was flat. He said he didn't like this place. Caleb, his expression unreadable, asked what the president wished to discuss. Adrian looked at him, the man he'd wanted for a decade, and felt a wave of despair. He couldn't touch him, couldn't confess, couldn't have him. A vicious thought surfaced. He was the most powerful man in the country. He could just take him like that night in the study. But then he looked at Caleb, saw how the sharp suit hung loosely on his frame, and remembered the man's tireless dedication. He thought of the modest apartment Caleb lived in, the years he'd poured his life into public service. He sighed. He proposed that for one night they forget their titles. They were just two men who used to study here. Caleb demurred, saying he wouldn't dare. Adrian snorted, telling him to stop pretending. He'd had the Secret Service create a 200-foot perimeter. After a moment, Caleb looked up. He tentatively said Adrian's name. "What is it, Caleb?" Adrian asked, a teasing note in his voice. Caleb's jaw tightened. He asked why Adrian always had to mock him. Adrian laughed, retorting that Caleb seemed to like it. He reminded him of their first night together, when Caleb had told him to leave and then begged him to stay. A deep blush spread from Caleb's neck to his face. He stared at Adrian, his lips pressed into a thin line, then suddenly lunged forward and threw a punch. Adrian, caught off guard, staggered back, his nose exploding in pain. He shouted in outrage, tackling Caleb. They wrestled through the stacks, their argument escalating. Adrian yelled that Caleb was an emotional fortress, expecting everyone to read his mind. Caleb, grabbing Adrian's lapels, roared that Julian was a traitor colluding with foreign powers, and Adrian was too blinded by charm to see it. It always came back to Julian. Furious, Adrian got the upper hand, pinning Caleb to the floor and landing 2 solid punches. He demanded to know if Caleb would finally stop telling him how to run his life. Caleb, breathing heavily, his face flushed, grabbed Adrian's fists. As they struggled, Adrian, holding Caleb's waist down, became aware of something hard pressing against his leg. He frowned, then his eyes widened in cynical amusement. He laughed, accusing Caleb of coming to a private meeting armed. He asked if Caleb planned to assassinate him. For some reason, the corners of Caleb's eyes were red. Adrian pressed down harder, and Caleb let out a sharp, pained gasp, telling him to stop. When Adrian didn't, Caleb's hand shot out, moving toward Adrian's groin. Adrian scrambled back, accusing him of fighting dirty and trying to assassinate him. He called for the guards, but before he could finish the sentence, a hand clamped over his mouth. The world spun, and he found himself flat on his back with Caleb looming over him. A fist was raised, and Adrian flinched, shutting his eyes. What happened next was a blur. For the second time, he woke up sore and disoriented. this time on a dusty library floor. He was bewildered. How did a simple fistfight end up like this? There was no alcohol to blame this time. Caleb was already dressed, his movements stiff with pain. Adrian, feeling a pang of guilt, tried to help him up, but Caleb flinched away. Outside the window, cherry blossoms were in bloom. Adrian grabbed a handful of fallen petals and offered them to Caleb as a clumsy peace offering. Caleb ignored the gesture. He took a deep breath, avoiding Adrian's eyes, and gave another one of his deep, formal bows. He addressed him as Mr. President. Adrian's heart sank. He tried to protest, to talk about what had just happened. Caleb cut him off. He stated that last night, the president and he had conducted a tour of their alma mater to discuss educational policy. Nothing more. Adrian, incredulous, pulled open his shirt, revealing a series of fresh scratches and bruises across his chest. He demanded to know what kind of policy discussion required removing one's clothes. Caleb struggled against him, his carefully arranged hair coming undone again. Adrian's voice rose with frustration. He said knocking him out the first time was wrong, but he couldn't just let Caleb ignore this. Caleb finally broke free and, without a word, walked out of the library. Adrian was truly defeated. He shouted after Caleb's retreating form that he would ruin him. At every cabinet meeting that followed, Adrian could barely look at Caleb. When Caleb spoke, his mind would flash with unwanted images, with the memory of the proud Secretary of State trembling beneath him. He wanted to call him by his first name, but the formal title Mr. Secretary felt like a lie. Whenever his gaze drifted towards Caleb, Caleb would immediately look down at his papers. Adrian had hoped that after their second encounter, they could finally be honest with each other. Instead, the chasm between them had grown wider. Then one day, after a meeting, Leo approached him, his face ashen. He informed the president that Secretary North was getting married. Adrian drove himself to Caleb's apartment, ignoring the startled doorman and kicking open the door. He found Caleb inside and slammed the door shut behind him. He demanded to know if it was true. Caleb, his hands clasped behind his back, bowed his head. Yes, he said, his voice muffled by the formal posture. Adrian advanced on him. Caleb retreated until his back was against the wall. Adrian asked where he thought he was going. From behind the shield of his formal pose, Caleb's voice was cold and controlled. He was retreating to the proper relationship between a president and his secretary. Adrian laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. He reminded Caleb that he had been in the president's bed more than once, and that it was a bit late to be speaking of propriety. Caleb's posture seemed to crumple. He begged Adrian to let him go. He spoke of his family line, of his duty to marry and have children, of his refusal to be the president's kept man. A fire of pure rage and hurt surged through Adrian. He grabbed Caleb, pulling him close. He looked down at him with contempt, asking who would want to marry him now, a man compromised in such a way. He told him to stop making excuses. Caleb turned his head, his long eyelashes trembling. Adrian's voice grew softer, more wounded. He asked why Caleb wouldn't even look at him, why he couldn't believe Adrian's feelings were real. He asked if his affection was a burden, an obstacle to Caleb's ambition for a spotless historical legacy. Caleb seemed to make a decision. His voice was resolute, bitter. He said Adrian had forced him into an impossible position, neither a proper advisor nor a lover. He said he had made a mistake. If Victor had been president, his life would not be in ruins. The words were like ice water, extinguishing the last of Adrian's desperate hope. Victor. It always came back to Victor. He heard himself give a broken laugh. A loyal servant to his old master. He released Caleb, stumbling back. He told Caleb he would grant his wish. He turned and walked out, stopping at the door to give his final order to the waiting agents. Caleb North, Secretary of State, was to be investigated for conspiracy and shown due to his continued loyalty to a former political rival. Effective immediately, his security clearance was revoked, his position terminated. He was to be exiled from the capital and barred from ever holding public office again. Life went on. Adrian worked. He held meetings, he signed bills, he reviewed intelligence. The candles in his study burned down to puddles of wax, one after another. Leo begged him to rest, but Adrian couldn't sleep. When he closed his eyes, memories of Caleb flooded his mind, sharp and painful. There was no time for grief. A crisis was brewing on the border. A hostile foreign power had overrun 3 key outposts. The Secretaries of Defense and the Treasury jointly urged the president to authorize a military response, with him leading the command. Julian Pierce suddenly spoke up, advising caution. He argued that the loss of 3 outposts suggested incompetence or treason among the commanding officers, and that the president's life was too valuable to risk on the front lines. He recommended a thorough internal investigation first. Adrian watched him, a new, cold clarity settling in. He saw similarities between Julian and Caleb, both brilliant, both ambitious. But where Caleb was rigid, Julian was fluid. He could make the most unpopular policy seem palatable. It was why Adrian had promoted him. But now he realized he didn't know this man at all. He held a familiar, dog-eared report in his hands, the one Caleb had given him that first night. The pages were covered in Adrian's own red ink, annotations, and counter-arguments. The section most heavily marked was Caleb's detailed accusation of Julian's secret dealings with foreign agents and his consolidation of a shadow power base. Adrian had known, of course. He hadn't been blind. He had been waiting for the right moment to act. Julian asked if the president was feeling unwell. His eyes, usually warm, seemed to narrow. He mentioned he had a new chef who prepared medicinal, restorative meals and invited Adrian to his private residence after work. Adrian smiled. He told Julian he appreciated his concern and would be delighted to accept. Julian's penthouse was opulent, staffed by an almost unervingly beautiful team of aides. Adrian swirled the wine in his glass, commenting that the chief of staff's salary was being put to good use. Julian served him personally, his fingers brushing against Adrian's palm. He murmured that he owed all his success to the president's patronage. As Adrian drained his glass, a triumphant gleam appeared in Julian's eyes. He confessed that he was not like Caleb. He was honest about his desires. He cared nothing for ethics or reputation. Adrian asked him what he was trying to say. Julian pulled back a heavy curtain, revealing a private, steam-filled spa pool. He suggested the president worked too hard and deserved to relax. As Adrian rose, seemingly unsteady on his feet, Julian guided him by the arm, leading him toward the water's edge. Just as they reached it, Adrian suddenly spun around, kicked Julian squarely in the chest, and sent him tumbling into the pool. He pulled a small vial from his pocket and swallowed its contents, an antidote prepared by his physician hours earlier. He roared with fury, demanding to know how Julian dared drug him. On cue, black-clad Secret Service agents rappelled from the ceiling, their weapons trained on the sputtering chief of staff. Julian, though shocked, quickly regained his composure. He stared at Adrian. "So you knew?" Adrian's voice was laced with pain. He reminded Julian that he was a man he had personally chosen, whose talent he had recognized and nurtured. He asked how he could betray him, Julian, treading water, pushed his wet hair from his face. "Because I grew tired of waiting," he said. He admitted he was grateful for the opportunity Adrian had given him, but his ambitions went far beyond being a subordinate. He confessed to being fascinated not just by the power of the office, but by the man who held it. He no longer knew if it was power or love he craved. To achieve his goals, he had made an alliance with the nation's enemies. It was just a different path to the same throne. He said he did not regret losing to Caleb, only that he had not gotten to Adrian first. He sighed. "Hate me, Mr. President. I hope hate lasts longer than love." Julian was taken to a secure military prison, his execution scheduled for the next day. The border crisis was escalating. The enemy was advancing. Adrian and his team worked through the night, preparing for war. He was stunned to find the national reserves full, the military supply chains robust, and the troops better equipped than ever before. Even the emergency fuel depots at the border had been filled to capacity. It was all Caleb's work. He had been preparing for this day for years. Suddenly, Leo burst in, tears streaming down his face. He cried that an old servant from the North family was here and insisted on seeing him. A frail, white-haired man knelt before him, his worn clothes smudged with dirt from a long journey. He said he had come to beg for a final kindness for his master. He held out an old wooden box. Inside, nestled on worn velvet, was an onyx signet ring, shattered into a dozen pieces but painstakingly glued back together. The old man's voice trembled. He explained that his master, Caleb, had always been driven by a fierce duty to his country, willing to sacrifice everything, including his own happiness. He was a deeply private man who, even when he found someone he cared for, told himself he could not, must not, give in to his feelings. The old man said he had watched Caleb grow up and couldn't bear to see him die without giving him a chance at peace. He begged the president to go see him. The report in Adrian's hand fell to the floor. A tremor started in his hands and spread through his entire body. He asked what the man meant by die. The servant, wiping his eyes, explained that Caleb had been diagnosed with a terminal lung disease 5 years ago. Doctors had told him to retire, but he refused, insisting he had to continue his work for the president. Now, he didn't have much time left. The words struck Adrian like a physical blow. The world went dark. All he could see was Caleb's face, pale and still. He stumbled out of the room, shouting for his helicopter, for the chief medical officer. The journey was a blur of rain and wind. He arrived at Caleb's modest country home just as dawn was breaking. An old woman was helping Caleb into a chair on the porch. He was so thin that the wind seemed to blow through him. His clothes, once perfectly tailored, hung from his skeletal frame. Adrian's voice was a choked whisper. "Caleb." Caleb started, trying to shrink away. He warned Adrian to stay back, not to be exposed to his illness. Adrian slammed his fist against a nearby tree, the bark splintering under the impact. He demanded to know how much more Caleb had been hiding from him. Tears welled in Caleb's eyes. He explained that he had deliberately provoked Adrian into firing him, partly to make Julian complacent, and partly because he knew he would not survive the winter. It was better to disappear than to force Adrian to watch him die. He gave a weak, bitter smile. He said that for 10 years, he had pushed Adrian relentlessly because he knew his own time was short, and he was desperate to lay a solid foundation for Adrian's future success. He confessed his fears of an empty treasury, of foreign invasion, of Adrian being too young and surrounded by enemies. He coughed, a dark stain appearing on his handkerchief. He said the distance between them, of duty, of propriety, of public opinion, was a chasm he could never cross. He couldn't give Adrian a normal life, but he could give him a secure nation and a legacy as one of the great presidents. Rain began to fall in sheets. Adrian's heart felt like it was breaking. Caleb's eyes were bright with feverish intensity. He made Adrian promise to create an era of unparalleled peace and prosperity, to see his name written alongside the greatest leaders in history. It was his only dying wish. Adrian could not speak. He pulled Caleb's frail body into a fierce embrace, as if he could merge their two forms into one. Caleb wiped the rain and tears from Adrian's face with his sleeve. He asked if Adrian doubted his ability to achieve it. Adrian held him tighter. He promised. He swore he would drive the enemy back to the ends of the earth. And he told Caleb that if he didn't live to see him return victorious, he would find his grave and hold his victory parade there. He would celebrate with the entire nation, and with him a feast for the ages. The winds on the northern plains were brutal, flinging sand and ice against the soldiers' armor. At night, the cold seeped into their very bones. For months, Adrian slept in his uniform, his hand on his sword, ready for the call to battle. The war was long and savage, stretching from autumn through the depths of winter and into the spring. But finally, it was over. The victory parade in the capital was a sea of cheering crowds and red, white, and blue banners. Adrian rode at the head of his troops, his face weathered by the sun and wind. And then he saw him, standing among the cabinet members, looking pale but alive, was Caleb. Adrian dismounted, pushing his way through the jubilant crowd. He walked straight to Caleb and took his hand, holding it tightly. A faint smile touched Caleb's lips. He said the president looked darker and thinner. Adrian looked at his face, the face he thought he would never see again, and felt tears stream down his own. He was safe. The country was safe. He no longer cared about passion or titles or the judgment of history. On the long road back, he had stopped at a remote chapel and prayed to every god he could name. He had asked only for one thing, to be allowed to serve alongside this man as his president for the rest of their lives. That would be enough.